Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Noodle Seeds Beyond the Bubble podcast. As you guys know, the narrative is now beginning to shift a little bit. The excitement of AI is going to take over the world and take all our jobs is now moving a little bit more towards reality, where AI is absolutely transformational. But there are certain bottlenecks there as well. And so, maybe we need to take certain things with a pinch of salt. At Noodle Seed, we're building AI for the real world environment, particularly connecting AI agents to hardcore business cases that actually make sense beyond the bubble. And for that particular reason, we actually got a very interesting guest with us today, who's actually a part of the transformation for AI within the organization at Amazon. 10 years almost in the UK and now in Dubai. Previously, he was in Nestle, Ernst and Young, and a very long stint at AWS, selling AI and other digital transformation products to clients all over Europe. Today, we have with us Junaid Haq, who most recently now is immersed in sort of transforming Amazon as well, in terms of AI and digital transformation, but also really looking at what's working, what's not working, and what a lot of people are saying now, building that operating model, that framework of how realistically companies and enterprises can, utilize AI. Junaid, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us on the show.
Thank you, Muzamil. Thank you very much for the intro.
I just want to get a sense of, you've been hearing about this shift in AI that's happening. I want to get your thoughts on how do you see AI right now, and the narrative around AI right now, where we're hearing about jobs being taken away, AI being 10x better than humans, and the fact of the matter is, while we're seeing all these benchmarks of these models and so on and so forth, for me, the curiosity always exists. How much of that is being reflected in real world business environments, particularly in large scale organizations like the ones that you've historically been part of?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Muzamil, before I go into that, I'd like to just build on my background so I can bring the context and my experience into it. I'm a business transformation leader who's worked across manufacturing, logistics, procurement, operations, coming from industry experience and then building cloud technology and harnessing power of data and AI, advanced AI tools recently to solve complex business problems. One theme that I've seen as a common theme over the last 10-15 years is that problems have almost or and always remained the same. It's our approach and mindset on how we tackle them and solve them. Historically, when I started my career, Lean Six Sigma and TPM, Total Product Management Performances, mental models were very common to identify and solve problems. Uh, Today, I think what I'm seeing in my experience and my ecosystem, organizations are trying to solve something without changing the operating model. What do we mean by operating model? Operating model is who does what are the governance systems, how do you change the layers of governance and tracking things, and enabling your people by upskilling them on in these new ways and new tools. You asked a very pertinent question on, are these things bringing value today? There was a recent MIT study I came across, and that also spoke about that 95% of AI use cases are not yielding P&L level benefits. Uh, I think it may be mostly true. That's where I believe companies need to pivot to this new mindset uh, shift of looking at an AI operating model system where benefits are not only reaped at an individual level. Unless you redesign your organization and your capabilities to work alongside these agentic and AI systems, the benefits will not be trackable, sustainable, and implementable across the organization. So, right now, I see companies grappling with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of things changing. There's in AI and in this latest times, after every 3-4 months, there's a new tool or there's a new way of solving things, and those tools land into the hands of people and they're already figuring out what to do with the previous one. So it's creating a huge a plethora of problems alongside with the opportunities bringing to the people. So I think, yeah, in order to get to that new world and the future state, companies need to rethink their operating models.
No, that makes sense. I think for me, the biggest curiosity is in, is it even possible to create those new operating models? And the reason why I ask this is we've seen so much back and forth over the last year. I was speaking to someone in Meta, hardcore big tech, very AI black pilled, particularly after December last year, and they made some major changes. They got everybody to just sort of reimagine the way that they work, very AI first, so on and so forth. And now they're beginning to roll back a lot of that, because the narrative pushed them much more than they should have been pushed. And I think a lot of people, and what again people inside were saying were, we don't really know, we haven't let the dust settle, and we're making these changes that have billions of dollars of impact, um, that can go in any which way. And I heard the same about Snowflake, same about Salesforce. CEOs and leadership pushed through and said, okay, AI is going to do everything, and now they're beginning to roll back a lot of those things. So I think for me, the question really is, how do you still make these changes? How do you get ready for that world? I think the world is coming, undoubtedly. But how do you do it in a way that is risk averse enough so that you don't fall behind, but also not destroy everything in FOMO, if that makes sense. And right next to this question, I'm not sure if you're too connected to this, but there is a whole token maxing that was happening at one point where companies were like, okay, we'll invest a ton of cash in um, spending on AI compute, and letting our people just sort of use that and go wherever. And again, that has now been reversed and rolled back in many ways, where people have put up caps for their employees in terms of how much AI they can use and how much tokens they can use. So I'm trying to get a sense of whether you guys face that, or were you very incremental in your approach, and how do you then create that operating model if you have to cut through the noise and really see these are systems that we know are working, and are there even benchmarks right now of these AI systems are working, and let's go ahead with them.
Yeah, so it's again a complex question to answer. I think every organization has their own strategy, their own culture, and I think coming from a big tech organization myself, I know all of them have leading practices and setting new news every day. I'm sure there's no right answer, no wrong answer. I can start with a bit of Amazon context, which is public information as well. And obviously, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, famously says day two is death, and day one is the always on mindset. What it means
Hmm.
is that day one, day one mindset is that you always obsess from what customers want, and you work backwards from what customers want, and you ask yourself key questions like, what are the customer pain points, what does the happy journey look like, what's in it for your stakeholders, what's changing in the ecosystem. And you approach working backwards mentality to any product, service, innovation, even processes that you want to change in our organization at Amazon. So I would say the way we've tackled this is, first of all, everyone has an owner mindset. In innovation, you need to have that learn fast, fail fast, build fast approach so you can repeat. We believe in Amazon at creating three pizza teams, which means each team has enough leverage, enough speed, enough agility to learn, experiment, and build going forward. And we also have to see the wider ecosystem, how it's changing today, that we are creating softwares and tools that previously we used to use and work with, but now we're creating a future where we are working with these tools alongside us as our co-pilots and partners. Because of that change, it is requiring, we're building an AI operating or an AI native ecosystem, whereas in the last 10, 20 years we were digitizing our ecosystem. which meant a whole lot of other things. Like, 15 years ago, I remember there was a buzz of RPA. And RPA was going to take away jobs as well. There was a lot of, and it did, maybe at shared service centers or call centers, it did have a huge impact. But approaching RPA was different. You used to approach RPA by looking at a process which is 15-step process, and you would want to maybe automate step number 5 and step number 8. So it was a very linear approach of solving things. How I'm seeing leading practice today is to, rather than bolting on AI on top of processes, we ask ourselves a question, uh, given that AI exists today, how would I redesign this process? One of the techniques famously in the industry is known as zero based design thinking or zero based processing. In that, you design a process based on an outcome. Like, what is the outcome you're trying to drive? From that
Mm.
outcome, you try to determine the decision rights. Like, what are the key decisions I want to be making? And then, where do I bring in the AI native workflow? What are the minimal number of steps to achieve that outcome? So this, what I just said, is one of the examples of approaching this new mindset shift by looking at the workflows, starting from the strategy, of course, of the business, on what is the strategy, what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve at a global, market, regional level, and then looking at what are the operating systems within that market, and how do you want to attack redesigning the new workflows so that the AI adoption works well, rather than just enforcing AI on top of everything. This mindset I've seen work well, and obviously, the empowerment and encouragement of organizations to allow teams to learn fast, fail fast. And right now, we're all in an experimentation, learning, storming, norming phase. Like I said before, there are multiple tools coming in the market. This, as soon as we get our hands on one of the tools, there's another one that comes in and solves few more problems that the previous one can't. And
Mm.
also, alongside that, the data is a common problem, we all know. So you can't wait for one thing to be fixed before you solve the other thing. That's why in a transformation, this is a business transformation where workplace, technology, and people, all these
Mm.
elements are impacted. And you have to be very agile and open minded and growth minded, and have the right culture, have the right leadership, have the right open conversations to focus on the right problems with the right mindset and keep moving forward.
Mm. Interesting. Um, just to get a sense of your role right now, because I understand you were previously hardcore AWS working with clients and sales or pre-sales role. Right now, you're purely internal focused, and because I see the title has moved away from AWS to Amazon, so I'm curious whether this is more AI transformation within the organization, and by within the organization, is this more is this the technical organization, or is this the Amazon e-commerce organization, and getting that transformation within that?
So right now, I'm in a global procurement sustainability organization within Amazon. So I
Hmm.
have a remit to look after the program, which is a global program, uh, where we are ensuring compliance on ESG and EU corporate social responsibility due diligence acts and human rights acts, to make sure that uh, all the suppliers, we have more than hundreds and thousands of suppliers in my function, who provide indirect procurement services to global Amazon operations, the retail operations. We call
Right.
them stores as well. So I'm not in AWS anymore. I'm on the business side. But my remit is to look at business transformation, on how do we use tech, AI, and data initiatives to execute our strategies and processes in sustainability, in order to drive compliance outcomes. So we stay compliant. We have visibility, traceability in our supply chain, and how do we work with our suppliers and our internal teams to drive compliance outcomes. So my remit is to work with tech teams and business teams together.
Makes sense. But in terms of the strategy, then, because I'm curious right now, is does let's take it like this. How do you see, because like you mentioned, whatever you deploy right now is a hit or a miss. It's A/B testing right now largely. on the backs of whatever new tools are coming out. On a macro for your organization, what's the strategy here? Like, what's the thesis? I feel like everybody is right now driving everything based on a thesis. This is where the world is going in 2 years. This is where the world is going in 5 years. And so we need to be ready there. We probably don't have the exact steps for that, but we're going to actively sort of explore towards that direction. And so, what's the thesis for your organization and let's say for your team, which is coming in from your leadership in terms of where all of this might be going?
Yeah, I can touch at a high level without going into much detail.
Of course,
So,
I
so,
understand.
so I think initially, I mean, you can relate to this as well. Maybe when I also started my career, we used to plan 3 years or 5 years strategy in the future. At that time, the premise was that obviously there'll be business volatility, economic uncertainty coming from the top of the country, impacting every business. So hence you can still afford to do some hedging and reserve your bets and look 2 years ahead in the future. At Nestle, we used to forecast 18 months ahead or 36 months ahead and plan our stocks and markets accordingly. Uh, Now that's a business angle. So now in a tech organization where the products and services are tech centered, data, AI, and people oriented, yeah, and with such fast pace where products and services and offerings change every year. If you go to Microsoft, Google, or AWS reinvents or these conferences every year, you'll see new news and new services reinvented every year, which
Mm,
change the customer conversation somewhat. But uh, at the crux of it, the problems that we're trying to solve again are common problems and have been the same uh,
mm,
in the same time. So I think the companies now cannot in a tech environment especially cannot plan too far ahead. So you're still but you still have to move at the same time.
mm,
So I think there's a minimum viable operating model that you have to look for, and the capability and the people are the most crucial element of this transformation journey. So unless
sure.
these two are addressed, you cannot address the long term implications of any change that comes, because change is the only constant. So
Mm,
with all the tools that are changing, so in my experience, for example, so like I said, so there's so many moving parts, it's difficult to plan too far ahead. But in order to bring some method to the madness, what I'm seeing happening is the business side, which has the P&L responsibility and which determines the big rocks, the strategic pillars that they want to focus on. Business still wants to forecast 2 to 3 years ahead so that there can be some stability around what we want to achieve, what are the outcomes we want to achieve in the long term, how do we organize, what resources do we need, because that stability forecasting is required. So while business is doing that on the tech side, in order to enable those outcomes, uh, despite the changes that are happening, uh, a few common themes are emerging,
mm,
which are helping inform the strategy. So, what are those common themes? So, one of them is, like I said, how do we design these AI native workflows? What are the frameworks to bring AI or a simpler product development or engineering work? How do we differentiate between these? And how do we move towards a product led organization rather than a process mindset oriented organization? What I mean by that is that we need to build product development mindset in the business end users now. That generalist mindset of knowing the context, bringing that context to the AI native workflows is highly critical now than ever before. It means bringing the system thinking through end to end all the nodes in the ecosystem, and then designing your workflows accordingly. So how do you do that? You train and upskill your people. Uh, so, despite the volatility of new tools coming in and the upside of new capabilities coming in, designing the processes, working backwards, mindset, design thinking, creative thinking, partnering with your stakeholders, freeing up more time to work with them to solve the right problems, to create new partnerships and new value add. Those things are becoming more and more important, and that's how with this change, even if the tools increase, if people focus on the right tools, the right partnerships, the right mindset, and being data literate is also one of the very key enablers. Uh, a business end user in these days need to understand what is the data, where is the data, what is the quality of the data. Unless he understands that, whatever tool comes in, it will not give any fruition or any benefit to the end user. So that's another element I'm saying. So just to sum it up, that answer, I think despite the plethora of tools coming and all the volatility and in the changes that are happening, is the learning and enablement of the team, continuous learning and enablement, and updating of that academy, uh, whatever organization, however they want to approach it. It's being data literate. It's being having an AI native workflow mindset, and also a creative and a design thinking led mindset, which product managers used to have, and now it needs to shift towards the business end users as well to have the same mindset.
Hmm. I think that's something that's very interesting that you've touched upon. First being data native, and second being design thinking. My own experience with AI has largely been, and I'm a technical person from my background, so I approached technology from a very software engineer mindset, like really learn the skill and then take it from there. What I've seen over the last 6 months, particularly since Claude's Opus models really started to become mainstream, is that the value of technical skills across any domain is just tanking massively, because 85 or 90% of whatever you needed to get done is now being done by these models, and they're phenomenal. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I think what's really now becoming important is actually having the understanding of how to break down every problem in a data driven way, where you understand all of the nodes of where data will come in, what step needs to be performed on that data, and how do you then send it to step two and then process it further. So, really, I think what people are missing is they're still thinking, you have this one AI which is going to be AGI, and you're going to say something to it and it's going to solve everything. When the fact of the matter is, beyond the AI, beyond the LLMs, it's really just breaking a problem down into 100 parts and individually integrating AI into all of those, and then creating a system where it can just fluently flow through. Unfortunately, that's where a lot of people fail, because you get, more often than not, you need a very, very sharp understanding of the domain that you're working in to be able to break those problems down, right? This is also, in terms of learning and development, a far more difficult problem to solve, because it's easier to say, okay, this is a new tool. These are the ways to learn it. This is, you press this button, this happens, you do this, and this happens. But to teach people critical thinking and design thinking and problem solving, I feel like that's something that it's not something that you can do in a week's workshops, right? This is something that requires exposure, it requires experience. And so I've been hearing a lot about, and I've been seeing as well, where fresh graduates are increasingly finding it difficult to get jobs. But in many ways, are we also not building that talent that is going to be that can actually utilize AI to its best potential? Because I feel like the best talent to utilize this are domain experts. Don't have to be technical, need to genuinely understand the business they're in. In supply chain, they need to understand every node of how supply chain works. They want to be in any other industry, they need to be the best at that particular industry, right? What's your experience like in terms of what I've mentioned? Non-technical domain experts who can then leverage AI to sort of very, very rapidly brush through the technical parts, not having to worry about those, but actually being able to create that system in many ways for it to work fluently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's. I mean, I can answer from my experience. So I've seen personally, I mean, over the last 2 3 years, the typical. And again, what you were saying, these are not new things. Only some of the things are new news, and that's why, in my mindset, how I approach them is always going back to first principles. Like I said, problems. how you attack problems. Maybe now you need a bit more creativity, like you were saying. We need to think more creatively. And how do we think more creatively? You need to have the domain expertise. We've been writing product requirement documents or business requirement documents the same way over the last 2 3 years, but now with the power of prototyping, I've seen the BRD cycles squeeze from 3 4 months to weeks or matter of days. So how is that possible? That's possible with the obviously power of AI by generating the documents, but you don't just generate them, with a click of a button. You need to give the right, background context, capture all the learnings from everyone, have the right discussions on that future state. And that's why having that design thinking led, working backwards from the future state mindset and working together with the teams to solve the right problems, and where would a human judgment add value versus a simple automation output prompt from given by an AI. So what I'm saying is, without experience being brought to these AI developments, the outputs are not very optimal. In fact, they're below suboptimal, and that's where the tools are failing miserably. That's why maybe the MIT study of 95% PNL value realization not being achieved. So you what's happening right now is, uh, the senior layer is probably going to increase if you don't hire enough juniors. The middle management, the orchestration task with this future state and mindset with agentic orchestration or multi-agent architecture will probably reduce the admin burden in the middle layer. Uh, but I think what really needs to happen is we need to design an operating model system where people are working alongside the agents, and there will be new roles coming. It doesn't need to stay like this because we're writing a new system. This is also going to take, I think, more years to develop and mature as we see technology evolve. It's like how do we feed strategy to an AI? How do we keep it responsible? uh, how do we bring the responsible AI element into every part of operation, whether it's marketing, sales, finance? How do we bring in the human in the loop element? How do we validate the output? Trust its efficacy in terms of the accurate outputs, and how do we monitor biases in these operations? So again, my what I've seen is AI works best when you bring cross-functional teams together who bring in the system thinking mindset and look at every aspect, and what are the possibilities of risk coming into your product which will make it fail. So you need to come up with new thinking, new mental models. You need to challenge together as a team because everyone might have their own biases and experiences working with different functions, tools, technology, data, experience. So the new world is a generalist world, but with the experience. You can bring
Hmm.
the core competence, bring in some journalists, and then bring this design thinking led, product led mindset and ask new questions, the right questions to get the right outputs. Without
Hmm.
that, obviously, if you don't, train our new joiners or new hires, or if you don't train them on the right things, maybe that training changes in the future. Maybe it is no longer crunching an Excel sheet number like we used to, start of our careers, work on Excels and multiple tabs of Excel to do macros and build some solutions. Now it's about how do you work alongside an agent and bring the right data in to unlock the right value.
Hmm. You mentioned new roles. Do you have a sense of what type of roles might emerge in the near future?
Yeah, so I mean, in our current context, we when we audit suppliers, we have different kind of personas in our work stream. So, for example, when we start off by segmenting our supply chain, which is a huge supply base, as you can imagine, the size of Amazon. So we do a risk methodology and vendor selection exercise in which we segment the supply chain and apply sophisticated techniques by bringing in internal and external data and synthesizing an output to shortlist a pool of vendor where we want to put in our efforts and focuses and drive our all the programs. Then we go into audit coordination and scheduling, in which their execution staff who are doing, day-to-day tracking, monitoring, chasing people based on SLAs, and then remediating the findings. Again, chasing suppliers for evidence that they've submitted, if they've closed down a compliance gap or not. Then working with suppliers who have breached contracts and bringing them those gaps in contracts to a closure and reporting back in the business. So today, what people are doing is manual follow-ups, working on SLAs, reporting, and kind of task executors alongside a bit of strategy as well, of course, and tactical work. I think in the future, I see more of an orchestration role, because think of time uh, broken down from how much time is spent today on a manual activity, how much time will we spend in the future on that manual activity. So the when the time is released, that person will become an orchestrator. He will have more time to do orchestration. He will have more time to fine tune the models. He will have more time to maybe get feedback from suppliers, do A/B testing or get user interviews, bring those insights back in the organization, and then work on developing more trust, because trust is the new currency with this new operating model. You bring it from external to your organization, you drive it internally in your organization. So in the future, I see task executors turn into advisors, trusted advisors. They can be, like I explained in my context, they can be risk orchestrators, they can be uh, you know uh, audit orchestrators to drive the best outcomes for the audit, for example, like giving back to the audit firms what they needed in the past and they were not able to achieve because of constrained time or not able to coordinate on things. Now they have more time, so they can optimize the processes. They can even change and continuously tweak the processes every 2 months, rather than developing an SOP and revisiting it the next year. So that's how I see on the process side of things. But also on the other hand, I see data owners becoming contextual business guardians in the future. What that means is, if someone today is holding a data set responsibility for, let's say, use case A or process A for the organization, he's spending most of his time building the pipelines, working with the engineering team, getting the BI reporting right, and then giving it to the organization. In the future, he's controlling data quality, uh, contextual efficacy, and where does the data set and how to bring it into a single pane of glass where everything is consolidated together, and work towards that modern data strategy remit. So that's how
Hmm.
you can see people shifting from being task executors, strategists, to trusted advisors, to orchestrators, to evangelists in the organization, where you can go back and give back to your business partners uh, new strategies, new ways of working, and unlock common mutual value.
Hmm. Makes sense. I want you to wear your AWS sales hat, right? And in that role, obviously, I think you were enterprise technology consultant, and basically professional services for AWS,
Yeah, yeah, I was
right?
selling professional services to enterprise customers.
Now, those most likely were extremely, extremely large scale enterprises, possibly Fortune 500 enterprises. And I mean, I started my career in exactly the same sort of professional services for enterprise, focused on data analytics layer. And I could very clearly see, there was this top 0.0001% businesses in the world who run business on a different level altogether. And then there is everybody else that just, sort of struggles to keep up and hopes to make it big one day so that they're able to have reporting, you know, on that level, or have the business run in with that sort of autonomy. I think one of the things that I'm now seeing with AI is that it is democratizing all of that to the masses, right? So the SMEs effectively, you can very quickly build and deploy. You can very quickly scale if you'd require. You don't need an extremely huge team of consultants, whether it's management consulting, whether it's professional services, XYZ. At the very least, I mean, to be very honest, if you're a 50% company, you can effectively do anything that a half a million people company used to do like 3, 4, 5 years ago. Obviously, scale to whatever your requirements are. Um, and obviously, while a lot of people are saying, okay, this is bad for the professional services folks because, now AI can replace it, I feel like the enterprise is still going to go with them and they're not being replaced anytime soon. What I'm actually seeing is a huge amount of opportunity that is now being created where the $5 million contract can now be achieved for an SME at $50,000, right? But someone has to figure it out and sort of deploy it for the SME as well. Um, and so I'm curious because now that there's this shift of deflation where the same problem needs to be solved, like you said early on, it's always a problem that needs to be solved. Tools can change or the cost can change. And so now there are new tools and the cost is far less. Because of that, how do you see the change, let's say, for even for AWS? I'd be curious because now you're beginning to see a lot of new services emerge that are just focused on SMEs. For financial services, for example, Stripe is huge because it's the go-to for every SME. You want to start a business, go to Stripe, and the consolidated power of that SME far outweighs anything. And Stripe is now becoming bigger and bigger than any sort of large-scale enterprise like financial service that's out there. So I'm curious, what sort of transformations do you see in organizations like AWS, which has always been very enterprise focused? Do you think they're going to be more inclusive now for the little man? And in terms of the opportunity now, considering that there is a certain deflation, how do you see the SME sector overall, courtesy of AI?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question to answer. I mean, I've worked mostly with enterprise, although I've worked with greenfield enterprise who borderline qualify as SMEs as well. Uh,
Hmm.
I think obviously as I think the technology will evolve, the cost of bringing AI data services and the cloud infrastructure as it evolves, and AWS maybe out of all the hyperscalers has the biggest advantage
Hmm.
by having the biggest infrastructure. And you keep
Hmm.
on hearing as well, maybe on the AI side, that so much capex has been invested. So where is the ROI? So I think that's a separate problem. But I think with that comes an opportunity in my mind, which I've actually seen as well. When I was at AWS, every year there was a reduction in cost to bring services to the clients per unit economics.
Hmm.
I've seen that come down, and that's I'm going to talk about just from Amazon's perspective, and that's also a public opinion, well stated, that Amazon wants to create a flywheel where the more products and services as a variety the end user has, the more we produce that, the better we are able to price that at the right price point because of economies of scale. And then if it's cheaper or if it's lower cost every year, then you buy more and more of that. That's how the whole retail marketplace is built. It's the Amazon famous
Hmm.
flywheel that Jeff Bezos also talks about. And in the Working Backwards book, you will see the mention of that. On the tissue paper, they wrote that flywheel, and then that became famous. Same applies to cloud services. And I think
Hmm.
from my experience, I worked with a few SMEs when I was in UK, and I saw the journey transform over a period of 2 to 3 years when I was with them in their journey. Uh, First of all, cost of doing business was coming down. Uh, when by that I mean using the services and consuming the services of AWS, and AWS was also able to offer more incentives, new programs in its data security migration. There are multiple programs that AWS has by segment, whether it's a startup, whether it's SMB, whether it's greenfield, whether it's enterprise. So they have incentive mechanisms. So with every year, while the cost is coming down, uh, tools and services are becoming more available. So companies, I didn't see any problem over there, and I only saw that increase and increase. I think where the challenge is and where you see more growth is when you see companies which are started from scratch. They
Hmm.
think the new operating model and the new system totally from a fresh pair of mind, rather than having that legacy of a bigger enterprise. That's why you see the speed and the curve of growth in these SMB and startup sectors more exponential than the others. and they're the ones probably who are coming up with the most agile and lean structure and creating totally new business model. And again, the platform power that AWS has is just an enabler. So again,
Hmm.
the SMBs are creating new news. Uh,
I think for just as an add on to this, I think with AWS, with my personal experience, AWS versus what's happening now, they have the infrastructure. They can have models, and obviously, as you mentioned, the cost of overall infrastructure is going down. But irrespective of the cost, because the cost I would argue is the same for anyone, right? Any new service, any parallel service, the cost is still the same. How do you price it? Is again, you can make it up and down. I think the real difference is the model in which how you sort of sell that service, and the harness or the orchestration or the abstraction layer on top of all of these services. So, because it was designed for the enterprise, it was inherently extremely technical. And so, because you knew if you're going to sell this, you're going to have experts come in and they're going to set it up for you. It's going to be multi-million dollar contracts. Whereas now, if I am someone who is semi technical building something, and I have the option of AWS, I have the option of, let's say, Google Cloud, or I have an option of three, four new services that are popping up. For me to be able to spend like $500 a month, which technically AWS has the opportunity for me to sort of absorb me and hope to enable me to go from $500 a month to $50,000 a month. But the level of complexity for AWS is far higher because the entire user experience is not designed for the new world, which is where you take all of that complexity, let the agent figure it out, wrap it around in a very sort of intuitive way. Google is somewhere in the middle, and then these new services are literally just saying, listen, give us $20 a month and just come in and tell us what you want, and we'll sort of hook it up for you. And over time, as your cost increases or your spend increases, we'll give you some visibility of what's happening. So it's largely like an Android versus an Apple thing going on, where there are a bunch of these Apple services coming in, plug and play, come in, we'll manage your infrastructure, just do what you're doing and deploy and move, go to market. And that's what I mean by whether you expect a shift, particularly in these large scale enterprise companies, to be able to start to focus towards the sort of very regular retail folks. Because the new world, I feel like, is what I normally tend to say, it's the YouTubeification of software. This is what I've experienced with YouTube 15 years ago. Where media became so democratized that today you have like the Mr. Beasts of the world with $1 billion media company that built entirely off of YouTube, right? So there's this new opportunity in these in a kid sitting in a basement just building an app, and that app could be on AWS, or that app could be on these new services. I'm trying to get a sense. I don't want to. I understand AWS. It is your company, and there are certain boundaries there, but I want to get a sense of the sort of bigger enterprise players and how they're approaching the democratization of a lot of this.
yeah, it's I mean, there's a let me tackle this in multiple ways. So one is, as I understand from your question, uh, obviously because there's so many new players coming up and they have leaner structure, they have a faster deployment time, and they maybe uh, they
The user experience is designed for
for the
the
end user as
smaller.
well, right? For
Yeah.
the end user, for a smaller group of cohort. So
Mm.
on that, obviously, I think that uh, if I compare Amazon Quick Suite, for example, which is a recent Amazon product, it is giving enterprises the capability to deploy, without too much of a technical hard work. It's being offered through Prime subscription, for example. As an end user, if you have Prime subscription, you can access
Mm.
Amazon Quick Suite, right? So that's one example
Interesting.
of
Yeah.
giving a tool in the hands of end users, whatever company size they are, and kind of take advantage of that. And I think alongside that, all the other offerings, you're absolutely right. Uh, Amazon, I've seen also recently making it more easier for customers in SMB and startup segment by designing the products and services which can be deployed more faster. So everyone is trying to do more with not with less, but easier as well. One of the conversations I always used to have in my sales days in AWS with clients was, how can you make this easier? This sounds very complex. what was the transformation that you're telling us?
Yeah.
How can you make it easier? And we used to spend time and go back and relook at our proposals and come back and say, actually, it's not that difficult. This is how we do it. Your half of your data is already on AWS. This is what we build on top of it. This is how we'll simplify. This is what the benefits you'll get in the end. So I think the same mental model is being applied as we speak. Our professional services and other professional services are also pivoting. How can they migrate workloads from months to weeks to days? How can they
Hmm.
make it easier for the SMB to onboard on this bigger platform and reap the benefits? How can they bring in agents in their delivery, in their line of work, whether it's scoping conversations or deployment conversations or security testing, and then maintaining and having the right DevOps and the cost economics monitoring later on. So all of this is being looked at from an usability perspective, maintainability perspective, and ease of use perspective. So thus change is already happening. The time scales are squeezing. Professional services are being roughed up on their budgets as well. Like you said, from $1 million contracts to hundreds of thousands of contracts, and to deliver time and scope of work very quickly. But I think what will happen, the benefit for the hyperscalers in this is, even if the time squeezed is less, the contracting and the commercial discussions, even in my time, were starting to change. If we needed to move the needle, it was moving towards outcome based contracts
Hmm.
rather than just time and material or fixed SOWs. You either do contingency, you put skin in the game, and you say, okay, I'm going to save you $100 million or $50 million, and you invest $10 million over the next 3 years. We are with you, and we're going to, discount, put in some mechanisms. That's all the commercial guardrails, but obviously we're in the value for you. We're driving the value for you.
True.
So similarly for the
True.
SMB organizations, because they need value very quickly because of the size of the company, the profitability, and maintaining the right financial health before burst or boom or bust situation, they would need to deploy things quickly. And Amazon can do this by enabling the right ecosystem, so they get on board on it, on the infrastructure quickly. And then the story of data coming into the uh, right ecosystem, so the organization can leverage the right data, have the right capability. And at the end of the day, even if professional services reduce their time to deploy a system or a tool or a data, the ROI comes quickly. The value realization
Hmm.
comes quickly for the organization. So while some piece of work will get reduced, the other revenue comes in quickly from a hyperscaler perspective. From a buyer perspective, they get to value quickly. They have incentives. They can negotiate the right incentives. They can negotiate the right outcomes, and they can change the negotiation and the contractual construct with the hyperscaler or whoever that partner is. That's why you see a lot of companies, it's a traditional model. They start with the POC, free, fully funded, because that's funded by a Microsoft or AWS or a Google. But then the later on journey is often battered and is left behind and doesn't scale properly. So I think if you move towards an outcome based future, and you're nimble, then both SMBs and enterprise will take advantage from it.
Makes sense. Uh, Junaid, I'm going to wrap this up, but I want to get a sense of where do you see all of this going in the next 5 years? Beyond obviously your own current role, from what you're seeing on ground, the sort of changes that you've experienced over the last 1 year, realistically speaking, how powerful do you think AI is right now in terms of business and in terms of, again, I mean, I would argue even digital transformation. I heard that for almost a decade, where it was constantly like, oh, digital transformation is going to change the world. Arguably, it did, and it didn't. Um, I want to now get a sense of whether this new AI transformation is going to drag on the same way, or do you think this is a different beast altogether? And those who aren't participating in it might end up as net losers. So again, what's your view of 5 years from now?
Well, it's my personal view. Obviously, things are rapidly changing. Uh,
Mm.
I would obviously there will be disruption, because of the tactical, repeatable work. Those roles will naturally be impacted. But then we have to look at uh, the risk of the business. You can't go from here to here without looking at the peripherals of the organization and still maintaining a sustainable growth mindset. So I think because of that, in the ecosystem overall, uh, if there are some pluses and minuses here and there, I think new roles will emerge with these technologies, data journey that organizations are on, and new ways of thinking and having that experiential journey of a new joiner to middle management to senior, of the experiential contextual learning of the business itself. So I'm net positive, to be very honest. I think in the next 5 years, we are rewriting ways of doing business. Uh, Going back to the initial point I said at the start of the podcast, where I said we are redesigning, or we have to redesign the new operating model, and we have to rewrite the roles in order to gain the benefits at an organizational level. Otherwise, it will be left with a few functions or a few pilots or with a few individuals. So
Mm.
it's because it's people centric change. Unless we bring the people on the journey, the benefits will not be achieved. So in the next 5 years, I see the ecosystems continuously evolving, changing, new business models emerging, new ways of tackling problems, new skills that you need to have. But it means obviously if you don't adapt to the new technology, if you don't continue to be learning and curious mindset and adaptable, you will be left behind for sure. But if you have curiosity, if you have the ability to learn, despite no matter how old you are or experienced you are, you need to learn, you need to be adaptable, you need to have curiosity, you need to be inclusive of the change, because we are probably moving to a world of generalist where solving problems is not difficult. Having common sense and common knowledge and that experience is more important. So, asking the right questions in this ecosystem is very important, and having that inclusivity and a different kind of leadership style. So, overall, yes, ecosystem will flourish. There'll be huge disruption from top to bottom, and new, with AGI, with robots coming in the future as well. They also have to then have a ramp up curve as well, like we're having with AI. So it won't be all gone like this. I think we are creating a new news, and this will always remain like this. There'll be new efficiencies, new skills, new things to look forward to.
Makes sense. Yes, thank you so much for taking the time out and sharing all that insight. I'm particularly excited to see. I think I've spoken to a lot of people out here in the US, particularly in the Silicon Valley. I think they're living in a different world because it's one thing to be at really at the tip of the iceberg, but I'm curious to see how a lot of this then impacts in the Middle East and Asia, because I think there's still a lag effect over there. And so, thank you for sharing that insight and whatever's happening out there. And yeah.
Hey, I'll just give you one last example before we wrap up. I was speaking to someone in California as well last month, and they were saying something very interesting that in LLMs, having the traceability of decision making is also a line of business potentially in the future for some firms who can provide some new services and offerings. For example, if a C suite or a finance function has made some decisions, how do they maintain the log of those decisions? And how do they revisit those decisions to see if they were optimal or not? And what kind of tree branch effect they resulted into? They can always go back and evaluate their decisions at that point in time. So
Mhm.
tweaking the LLMs, providing that service to an LLM of an audit data quality traceability. This is one example of creating a new line of business for a consultant or an advisory firm who would be selling this perhaps in the future. To do what?
Mhm.
To maintain trust in the AI ecosystem. So that's one example for you. That's just in one line of business, but you pick any other line of business, there is, I think, hope of positivity in the future.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing all that insight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And for all of you guys, let me know in the comment section below. How do you see hardcore businesses. Again, I wanna cut the fluff. Don't want to talk about tools and the new models. I think there's a lot of excitement already there, but really, I wanna get a sense of regular daily business workflows and how much of that is being propped up or aided or productivity multiplied courtesy of AI. Are you using this in your personal job workflows? Has it impacted your industry yet? Let me know in the comment section below. Would love to know more. But nonetheless, this was Sayyid Muzamil Hasan Zaidi. You are watching Beyond the Bubble podcast, courtesy of Noodle Seed Studios. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next week.